What's up, guys? My name's Stu, and today we are talking about the 5 worst Tier 6 ships in Star Trek Online C-Store. The holidays are coming up, and some of you might be thinking about spending that holiday money on a new ship for Star Trek Online. Normally, I like to wrap up the year with a top 10 list of ships from the C-Store, but last time I did that, the 12th anniversary bundle came out like 2 months later and totally outdated that video. So this time I'm gonna wait until we know for sure what's going to be in the 13th anniversary bundle before I do that video. In the meantime, let's talk about some ships you might want to avoid. There are plenty of good ships in the C-Store, but there are also some pretty not good ships in the C-Store. These are ships that either had pretty decent stats in the beginning but just haven't really aged that well, or these are ships that just weren't that great to begin with. In no particular order, the first ship I would definitely not recommend buying is the Mirror Guardian Cruiser. First off, the Mirror Guardian really doesn't have great bridge officer seating, only having a lieutenant level command seat. A command seat lower than lieutenant commander level really isn't going to have much use. The ship also has a really underwhelming starship trait and console, so I really wouldn't bother with those. But the big thing that I really don't like about this ship is that it does not come with a fleet version. Now, there are plenty of C-Store ships that don't have fleet versions, but those ships are at least spec'd to be similar to fleet ship stats. The Mirror Guardian, however, has stats that are just like a normal C-Store ship, so it doesn't have that extra console slot. You gotta remember that the Mirror Guardian was originally released as a promotional thing with, I think it was WizKids, so originally this was only available via a code. When they made this ship, they basically just copy-pasted the stats from the original Guardian Cruiser, gave it a mirror skin, and switched up the specialization seat, and that's it. The problem is that they gave it the original C-Store version stats, not the fleet version stats, and they also didn't give it a fleet version, so this ship will forever be underpowered in comparison to other starships because it is missing a console slot. Now, if you really like the look of the Guardian just for Space Barbie reasons, I would recommend going with the original version because that one has a fleet ship version, and it also has an intel seat instead of a command seat. It's still only lieutenant level, but at least with intel, that's going to be more unconventional systems triggers, so that's better just stats-wise. Both ships do have the same starship console and trait, though. However, if you're looking at this ship just because of Terran Space Barbie reasons, I would look at literally any other Terran ship in the C-Store. You know, there's the Lexington, the Trailblazer, the Adamant, even the Cygnus would be better than this thing. Next up on our must-avoid list of C-Store ships is the Resolute Advanced Heavy Cruiser. This ship also has an underwhelming starship trait, but does seem to have a pretty decent console on it. Or at least the console would be decent if it could be used on any other ship, because as it is right now, it can only be used on variants of the Excelsior. It's a shame. This console has a nice bonus damage buff, which would make it a really nice well-rounded damage builder on pretty much any build, but like I said, it's restricted to the Excelsiors. The ship also has a Lieutenant Commander command seat, which normally would make me say this could be a pretty good torpedo build. However, the rest of the bridge officer seating, it's not great, mostly because this thing has 3 engineering seats. That's 1 commander level engineering seat, 1 lieutenant commander level engineering seat, which is also the command seat, and 1 ensign level engineering seat. Honestly, that much engineering seating should be a crime because it totally ruins this ship. Some better alternatives, the Endeavor class has some pretty similar stats without being bogged down by so much engineering seating, but still has that lieutenant commander command seat if you're really attached to that. And of course there's the legendary Excelsior, which is much better suited for energy weapon builds, being a miracle worker ship. However, that one is only limited to the 11th anniversary bundle. There's also the Presidio Command Battle Cruiser, which is not only a full command ship, but also has a hangar bay on it. Oh, there's also the Clark Multi-Mission Command Cruiser. That's another one I would recommend over this, because that's another cruiser that's a full command ship with a 4-4 layout, and it also has a hangar bay, so that one makes a fantastic torpedo build, but also makes a pretty good tank. The Clark is also a variant of the Miranda class, which means in Star Trek Online it's going to have a ton of Space Barbie options because there are just so many different variants for the Miranda class these days. Speaking of Miranda class variants, that brings us to the next ship on this list, the Reliant Advanced Light Cruiser. Again, this is another one with an underwhelming trait and console, which really isn't unusual for Star Trek Online. It's also a cruiser with a 4-4 weapons layout, which really isn't great on a ship that doesn't have command seating. However, the main reason this ship made the list is because of one thing in particular: pilot seating. Yes, the Lieutenant Commander Universal seat on this ship is also the pilot seat, which, honestly, pilot seating on a ship that isn't an escort it always feels weird. Really just a ship that doesn't have pilot maneuvers. Without pilot maneuvers, pilot seating it's just gross. And since this ship is not a full pilot ship, it does not have pilot maneuvers. Now, pilot seating, it's not a complete curse, especially if you have the trait off of the Tier 6 Nova, which you can use to help build yourself some crit chance. I went over that in my last video. Though even with that extra crit chance, this is still a 4/4 light cruiser, which not great without that command seat. Though the pilot seating being also on the universal seat means that's going to cut into the amount of unconventional system triggers you're going to be able to use. So again, more points off for this ship. If you're really wanting a variant of the Miranda class, honestly, there are so many to pick from at this point, because there's this one, which is meh. There's the legendary version, which is actually pretty good. That's a temporal ship. There's also the Clark, which I just went over earlier. That's a command ship, really nice for a torpedo build. And there's also the most recent one, the Bozeman, which is a full intel ship. That one's really nice for an energy weapon build. It's also a frigate, so it has a ton of universal seating. Honestly, the only reason to own this ship is because it comes in the Elite Federation starter pack, which comes with this ship plus a bunch of other things to help you get started, like a bunch of inventory slots for your bank, your inventory, and I think a couple ship slots, and some other things to help get you started in the game. Plus, those Elite starter packs are only 2,000 Zen, whereas a normal Tier 6 ship is 3,000 Zen, so seriously, there's no reason to buy the Reliant Advanced Light Cruiser on its own, because you could either get a better ship at the same price, or you can get the same ship cheaper in the starter bundle. Oh, before I move on, this ship also has a Klingon and Romulan variant. What were those called again? The Hapu Advanced Light Battlecruiser and the Daleth Advanced Light Warbird Battlecruiser. Yeah, those are basically the same ship, same seating, only minor differences, because they're different factions, but yeah, I would avoid those as well for the exact same reasons. Next up on ships you probably want to avoid, I'm probably going to get some blowback on this one, the Jupiter Carrier. Okay, even just looking past the fact that carriers have always been pretty underpowered in comparison to other ships in Star Trek Online, even compared to other carriers, the Jupiter is not that good of a ship. It has a ton of science seating, which would mean something if it had a secondary deflector, but it doesn't because it's a carrier. Or if you'd rather do something more weapons focused, like I've done on other carriers in the past, this also isn't a great candidate for that either, because it has very limited tactical seating, only having a lieutenant level tactical seat and a lieutenant level universal seat. Its starship trait, Insult to Injury, sounds kind of interesting because it allows you to give the ability transport warheads to your hangar pets, but honestly, the performance of this trait has never been all that impressive. Mostly because no matter what abilities you use, it will only give transport warhead 1 to your pets. The console Fleet Coordination Matrix, again, is one that sounds kind of interesting. It gives a decent bonus damage buff, but again, it is restricted to this starship alone, so you're not going to be able to use it on anything else. Owning this ship also unlocks the ability to use the Callisto Light Escort frigate pets. There aren't a lot of Starfleet-themed frigate pets. There's these and the pets that come off of the Universe class, which also means that the Callisto is the only one that is contemporary to Star Trek Online's timeline, since the Universe class is from the distant future. Now, these frigate pets are equipped with, The Elite versions come with a quad cannon, a dual heavy cannon, 2 quantum torpedoes, and a turret in the aft, but they're not so great when you get to the abilities. Torpedo Spread 3 and Scatter Volley are kind of nice, but these frigates also come with Lock Trajectory. Yes, someone actually thought it was a good idea to give Lock Trajectory to hangar pets. Putting aside the fact that Lock Trajectory has literally no benefit to your damage or any other beneficial stats, but the NPCs just aren't programmed to use these pilot abilities effectively, because they just fire them off randomly. So with these pets, you're just going to have frigates that are sliding off into nowhere for no reason whatsoever. Now, even if you do like these pets for some reason, the real cherry on top of it is that you can't use them on any other carrier except the Jupiter. So if you bought the Seneca, sorry, you still can't use it. Now, if you're wanting a ship similar to this, I would definitely recommend the Seneca Command Carrier, because that is at least a full command ship. It's also the only other Federation carrier that's in the game that isn't a flight deck cruiser. Now, let's move on to the last, and what is also the newest ship on this list, the Nobel Miracle Worker Research Science Vessel. This is another ship with a really bad console trait, which, I mean, that's nothing unusual to Star Trek Online, even on good ships, but it's still worth mentioning. But the main reason that this ship is on the list is because it is a Miracle Worker ship that is also a science ship. This is another thing I went over pretty well in my last video, and that's that Miracle Worker has very little benefit for science builds. If they had mixed in an Intel or a Temporal seat, this wouldn't be so bad, but no, this thing has 2 Miracle Worker seats. Miracle Worker is much better suited to energy weapon builds, like Beam Overload, but this is a science vessel. You're definitely not going to want to put a Beam Overload build on this thing because it has a 3-3 weapons layout. I'm not saying you couldn't do it. In fact, I'm sure it could be done. It's just it's not going to perform nearly as well as, say, an escort or a cruiser with Miracle Worker seating. The only Miracle Worker ability that's really going to have any benefit to a science-type build is going to be Destabilized Warp Core, and that's really just because it deals some radiation damage. The only other benefit to Miracle Worker in this case would be the extra console slot. Science builds are very reliant on their universal consoles, so having one more console slot in there is going to be of some benefit, but not enough to overcome that Miracle Worker seating. Some better alternatives to this ship, as funny as it is to say, the Tier 6 Oberth would actually be superior to this ship because that's at least a full temporal ship. There's also the Eternal Multi-Mission Science Vessel, that's another temporal ship that also has a hangar bay on it. Or if you're not interested in going with temporal, you could also go with the Somerville, which is an Intel ship, and also comes with a really good trait for science builds. So yeah, those are 5 ships in the C-Store that you might want to consider avoiding. Hopefully you found this and my recommendations for similar ships to be helpful in not making a regrettable decision. If you have any other ships that you think should be avoided, or if you think some of these ships shouldn't have been put on the list, let me know in the comments down below. While you're down there, be sure to hit like and subscribe and hit that bell for notifications. If you'd like to further support the channel, you can hit that join button to become the member. There's also the super thanks button, or you can find the merch store in the description below. Either way, thank you so much for watching. My name's Stu, and I will see you guys next time.